Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. America celebrates its 250th anniversary, a time that saw it transform from a former colony into the most powerful nation on earth and an inspiration for many people the world over. Speaking at the Mount Rushmore Monument, US President Donald Trump said that America isn't perfect, but America has overcome challenges for 250 years and turned them into opportunities. So what opportunities and challenges is America facing today? And how will the way it deals with them influence the rest of the world? Joining us here today is Małgorzata Zawadka, social anthropologist from the Wizja University in Warsaw. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Nice to be here, especially in this day.
In this day, because you've spent a lot of time in the US as a correspondent, you lived there, you've seen the country change. So how does it feel to see this crucial anniversary and all that it entails?
I am touched. I miss America. I miss New York. I miss my daughter even more. Now she's in Copenhagen, and I just called her and said, "Oh, it's 4th of July. Happy 4th of July," because it is like America's birthday. It's always celebrated. We always, people in America, they always gather, to watch the fireworks. And one of the most touching moments that I remember about being New Yorker, being in New York, is just going and finding the place that we can see fireworks.
And they're everywhere, right?
July.
I had the opportunity to be in the US on 4th of July. Once it was in California, not even in LA, like it was one of the smaller towns there. Still, fireworks were quite impressive.
Yes, I'm
the
not
long-standing tradition,
the funny
right?
thing is, I'm not a fan of fireworks. I think they are ridiculous. But this is the moment when, like the 4th of July, suddenly I do become the fan, and I say, oh, it's great, watching the fireworks on the sky in New York, especially after September 11, I've been there. This was like, you really go through this, patriotic emotions and stuff. So I can imagine that today New Yorkers are really even in this heat, which is kind of really life-threatening, I would say, if you go and stand the whole day in, participating in all the events. But I can imagine that people are like really going through a lot of, this patriotic emotions, even though Donald Trump specifically said who is the patriot, who is not in his...
So there was lots of politics in his speech. But before we actually go into this, would you say that right now, at this threshold of, another 250 years ahead of us, America has indeed become stronger? President Trump definitely believes so. He said the birth and survival of the American nation under God is quite simply the best, most incredible thing to happen on this planet by human hands. And later on he added, no country has done more good for this world than the United States of America. Would you agree with this?
Well, if we think about the Second War, if we think about the ideals, yes, America did a lot of good stuff, I say, but the people who built America are from other countries. This is the immigrant country, so I would say that, Tesla was from Austria back then. Everyone is from somewhere. Ayn Rand, who built the ideals of communism, capitalism against communism, who wrote a Bible of American capitalism, was from Russia. So this is the paradox of the country. And, I would say also no other country did so much harm to their own people, indigenous Indians or black people when they were used as slaves. So it is, of course, there is like everything about America. You can say one thing and then you can find something contrary.
Well, the difficult moments in American history, right? Some of which are very difficult to appreciate for people living in Eastern Europe. So our perspective definitely tends to be favorable, right? Because we see America as the protector of the region, right? As, the bulwark of democracy, especially here. And, one could argue, especially now.
Yes, Ronald Reagan presided over the fall of communism, and we always think about America as this country of freedom, which is true. It is the country when, people cherish freedom, and which is really something that also touches my heart, is this individual freedom. What Trump also says, was underlining, is his speech that no other nation loves freedom so much. But what he meant, it was like personal freedom. I am a man of my my own, I can make my own life, I can choose my own religion, I can choose my own. So, and I would say that still, no matter what we say about America, it's still the land of opportunities. If you really want to make it, if you really stay away from drugs, alcohol, from bad influence, you still can make it in America. I went there as an illegal immigrant, and I could see my friends who stayed there, and they are doing really well. Those who stayed from alcohol and drugs, they are still fine.
So
really.
it's a country that inspires, this sort of drive to, the pursuit of happiness, something that is included
Definitely.
in the Constitution. That's the exact phrase, pursuit of happiness, right?
That's the amazing thing, that everyone has the right to pursue the happiness. Of course, when Jefferson wrote it, paradoxically, he was owning 600 slaves. So, there are those ridiculously hypocritical, juxtapositions in America.
So it was an idea that still had to find a full reflection later on the abolition of slavery, right? So it didn't happen for quite a while. But, coming back to America's position in the world today, following Iran, following earlier on Venezuela, do you think that America is in the position still to dictate the terms in places where tensions remain high, like Central and Eastern Europe, for example?
First of all, it's still the strongest army in the world, the biggest budget. Trump wants it to be $1.5 trillion for Pentagon a year. Can you imagine? Second of all, culturally, it still has the biggest influence. And there is one more thing we have. We are an informational colony of America, right? Facebook, Twitter. So whatever they did, they colonized Europe right now. So we could think that they are getting weaker because of China and because the world is different. But really think how much we really depend on America. And when you were reading the quotes from Trump that he says, we still have the challenges, he should add, and I am one of them, right? And I am your biggest challenge, America.
Definitely one of the controversies there has been what Trump said during their speech, apart from statements that were universal in nature. He also railed against communism, but he seemed to address that specifically, to some extent, against members of the Democratic Party. So there was some domestic politics surfacing there, right?
You could look at this from two words. Either he's in the old era when America was fighting Russians and communists, so he still has this way of thinking.
Well, we have communist China today, right?
But I rather think that he uses the language, but he wants to apply the language to today's America. And as he always says that, the worst enemy is within, he talks this about Europe, and he says this also to America, that its one worst enemy is the enemy within, which means no values, people who have no traditions, people who want. So it's also contrary because it's against individuality. But he sees today's Democrats, of course, they are socialists, they are not communists, Ocasio-Cortez or Zoran Mandami. Let's remember that education, healthcare, they are still not free in America. So America is very far away from socialists. Actually, the closest to the socialist ideals, I would say, are the techno-oligarchs who are telling us that in 5 or 10 years, we will need to have the income for everyone. I miss the word. What Elon Musk is preaching, and he is actually the face of today's administration. He is saying that...
Or used to be, but still represents some of the concepts which are still...
Remember that Trump took him to meet Xi Jinping, right? So Musk is still, the face of America today.
And general leaders from, the Silicon Valley people were present there, so it actually shows just how much influence they have, which some people would say, well, it's against the idea of, everyone being able to make their own fate, but there are people more powerful than anyone else sitting there in these companies. But coming back to transatlantic relations, because this is something that is on our mind constantly. Do you think that America will remain committed to maintaining those? Because some people say that, Trump is undermining this. But we've seen the pivot towards Asia under Barack Obama. And there are worries that America is simply responding to geopolitical priorities with China. And some people say, well, what if this leaves us in a difficult position?
I would say that Europe left itself in a difficult position, not really arming itself, right? Just forgetting about how important it is to stay strong and letting America to take over.
Pretending history has come to an end.
Yes, and this sentiment that America do not want to be a policeman of the world, I know it since I came there, which was like at the beginning of 90s. So this is nothing new. I still cannot imagine Americans suddenly turning into collective technocrats, because that's, I would say, right? So
what about isolationists? Tendencies like that had existed in the past.
It's always existed, and it's always, and of course, America is kind of turning its back on Europe, but it also, at the same time, it makes it stronger. So well, the answer is it depends. If J.D. Vance wins presidency, the threat is much bigger that America will become more isolationist. If Zoran Mandami or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, it's actually a threat also, because they don't care about Europe. So I would say it's probably also more generational change. And every generation, like every 50 years, America has to find out how Europe is really important for America. So maybe we are at this moment. So I still think, culturally and all the freedom philosophies, they are from Europe, right? From John Locke, from Rousseau. So we have the same culture, and I honestly think we will have, unless something unknown will happen with the artificial intelligence, which I honestly think it's a big threat, still undermined.
Which would be a fascinating discussion for another day. For the time being, Małgorzata Zawadka was our guest here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you, and happy 4th of July.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.